Hello there, and welcome to the recording of another brand new episode of Marketing Scoop brought to you by SEMrush. This will be episode 29. We'll be starting the podcast introduction proper in about 3-4 minutes' time. Just give people an opportunity to join us live if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, then maybe you can fast forward the next few minutes just to give people an opportunity to join. However, we will have a little bit of a chat about what is happening in terms of the latest news in the digital marketing world, and probably more likely the organic search world, because Judith, there has been some significant shenanigans going on in the world of Search Console over the last few weeks.
I'm not sure that Google would call it shenanigans. I'm quite sure that they were rather stressed about it and were like, just look calm and collected in your public face and it'll be fine. They have lost all of the data from April 9th to April 25th. That means that if you go in and you look at any of the reports, excluding the performance report, it's all filled with data from April 25th only. So April 26th only. So everything from April 9th to April 26th is actually all the same data from April 26th. So you cannot trust it at all. If you're using something like, SEO Manager uses Google Search Console information. A few other tools use Google Search Console information. It will not be working. And they've also managed to break the manual actions. So they fixed the missing data, but now they're incorrectly expiring manual actions for people in Google Search Console. I have a feeling this move is not quite going as smoothly as they were hoping.
Wow. So not an insignificant week in terms of news. We've always got loads to discuss in the opening few minutes. We've got a few people starting to watch us live now. Hello, Carlos Castro. He's saying hello, Judith, in the chat. Not saying hello to me, but it's all right. Carlos, I won't take it personally.
It's because he feels sorry for me because my home internet is now worse than the hotel one.
Well, we've got the audio going in decent quality, so that's the most important thing for the audio podcast anyway, apart from us not being able to see your wonderful features. But in terms of the audio podcast, you can of course subscribe to that, and you should be subscribing to that over at semrush.com/podcast. Just scroll down on that particular page. This is actually the page of today's show, but if you go to semrush.com/podcast, then you should be subscribing to that. We've got loads of episode downloads happening very quickly as soon as a show is published now. Simon Cox in the chat. Hey, Simon. Hello. Everyone's greeting Judith, but not me. But let's not take it personally. Let's just perhaps actually
this start. Is just Simon winding you up.
Thank you, Simon. Yes. What I'm not going to do is I'm going to ignore the viewer comments, and that'll be the most productive way forward, and start with the proper introduction of the show. So let's get going with the podcaster proper. Marketing Scoop Season 2, Episode 29. What can SEO learn from CRO? Brought to you by SEMrush, this is Marketing Scoop. I'm David Bain.
And I'm Judith Lewis, and welcome to the SEMrush show that reveals the latest digital trends and technologies that impact your marketing strategy.
Together with industry experts, we delve into SEO advertising and content marketing to uncover the ultimate recipe for digital marketing success. Today's show features a great speaker and a great supporter of Digital Elite Day, a London event that delivers advanced learning for professionals in CRO and search. Find out about that over at digitaleliteday.co.uk. Our first guest is a man whose specialties include conversion rate optimization, analytics, business intelligence, and commercial analysis. He's a Web Optimization Consultant at SiteSpect and the owner and chief consultant at TRS Digital. Welcome to the Scoop, Tim Stewart.
Hi there. How are we doing?
Welcome. And next up, we have an SEO consultant who's managed campaigns for both Tesco and Debenhams. She's currently an SEO manager at Amara Living. She is an SEO consultant at Not So Scary Digital Marketing, and she is the host of the podcast SEO with Mrs. Ghost. Welcome, Alina Ghost.
Wow, what quite an introduction. Thanks so much, Judith. And may I say, you guys are always so smooth on the podcast. I'm just totally jealous.
Well, we work for years at that ahead of this auspicious moment, right, David?
Oh yes, decades.
So, Alina, I'll stay with you. What we would like to know is, as an SEO, how closely do you work with CRO?
Yeah, sure. So I think CRO is really important. So conversion rate optimization. Testing on your website.
Sorry, Alina, we lost you for a second there. So can I just ask you, for the benefit of the audio podcast, to repeat what you were saying there? You just started with the sentence, CRO is important for. So if you can start with that sentence again, that would be fab.
Yeah, CRO is important to ensure that the customers and the people who come through to your site actually convert. And therefore, it's not only the engagement and the conversion, so it doesn't actually just have to be product sales, but it can also be actually viewers and readers engaging with your content and then signing up to a newsletter, for example. But then that's important because obviously it's part of the algorithm update in one way or another. And it's mostly important if you are on that page one competing for that top spot.
Superb. Okay, well, let's ask Tim a similar kind of question. So what about you, Tim? How closely do you work with SEOs?
Fairly regularly, actually. Obviously, what I do is trying to make more money for the business. And as Alina said, it's not just about the traffic coming in, because that's one part of it. It's getting those guys to do an outcome, make some positive business outcome, which is what how you run your business. It's not unheard of fairly regularly, in fact, that I'll go in and I've been called in because sales aren't going the way people want and they think their conversion rate's to blame. And then I will fire up Semrush. I'll do a quick sort of analysis of their place in the market. And the problem quite often turns out to be that there may well be UX and conversion issues. There may well be proposition fit issues, which I can look at, but they've got gaping great holes in their SEO. There's either not enough traffic or the traffic quality is indicated to be quite poor. Now, I'll identify that as part of the job when I go in, is to work out where their problems are, but I don't fix that sort of stuff. That's a specialism in its own right, so I end up working with the appropriate SEO resource depending on what their problem is, be it technical, content, or positioning. So it's a fairly regular pattern. I've worked with Judith a couple of times. It works really well in terms of they can define kind of where you're positioned in the market, but when they land on the website, they're mine and I turn them into what the business needs. So it's pretty much the standard operating setups. The problem I normally get is when there is no SEO person there, I can only do what I do with traffic. If there's no traffic or no quality traffic, everything I do is a much smaller multiple.
So you say, Tim, you don't fix that kind of stuff. Someone that probably fixes that kind of stuff is Alina. Alina, what kind of regular requests would you get from a CRO in terms of related SEO activities that you should be fixing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there's a mix of things there, really. I think all teams come up with ideas and suggestions as to what they think.
Sorry, Alina, we're having a little bit of a challenge with your audio. Hopefully you pop back in to see us in a second. Can you hear us, Alina, at the moment?
Yeah, I can hear you guys fine, so I'm so sorry that my
Okay, that's okay. If we can get you to go back to your previous sentence again, I think it was related to teams. So if you can start off at the beginning of that sentence, we'll do the edit of that afterwards. I'll leave you with it.
So basically, it just depends where the idea comes from, and then the SEO person so myself and my team is brought into that project. Essentially, it's about A/B testing and ensuring you're doing the right thing for the user. Are they actually, is it improving the amount of pages that you're seeing, or is it improving the product sales? What is important for that project and what you're trying to achieve? So I think it's really important to have that communication going. And obviously, it's good to test to ensure that you're doing the right thing, because you'll be surprised that even a color can make a difference to that. So obviously, indirectly, that could help SEO in the sense that as that's one of the ranking factors that could help you rank better if there's people engaging with your content more and more.
It'd be great to get Judith's opinion on this one as well, because Tim did mention that he's worked with Judith a couple of times. So I'd be keen to see what kind of activities he tries to get Judith to assist him with. So, Judith, what happens there?
What he tries to get me to assist him with. Well, we worked together on one particular client that comes to mind, where they were really looking to increase the amount of sales, but one of their problems was a significant number of SEO stumbling blocks. And then when we were getting people to the site, the number of steps they had to take in order to convert was outrageously high. So I could bring people there, but it was pointless if they weren't going to convert, which is where Tim comes in and makes a huge difference. So I think with regards to SEO and CRO, we need to understand from CROs what pages they need us to get people to for conversion. Then we need to understand as SEOs what the search is that will lead to the conversion. So there are different types of searches people do: informational, transactional, comparison, etc. And we need to understand where to land people on the site. And then I need CROs to help me convert them once they get there and move them through the site. So UX, CRO, SEO, we all have to work together as teams.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that in the sense that it does start with the search intent to ensure that you know your customer's mind, in the sense that what are they searching for and what page. So what doorway are you going to be showing to your website, basically, to fulfill that intent? And at the end of the day, CRO is perfect at making sure that you do fulfill that intent, and as quickly as possible too.
So, Tim, do you use SEOs on a regular basis to get search intent, or is that something that CROs tend to do themselves sometimes?
I think it's the rare CRO that does that side of things. I kind of quite often we're brought in to look after kind of more symptomatic stuff. So we're told to look at, why aren't they going past this page? How we get more sales out. The problem quite often is the root cause is they haven't come in with the right intent. So the sort of stuff I will get them to look at is, what are we trying to get on this page? What efforts we've got? How well are we tracking on the various metrics for? If we've identified, as Judith said, this is an informational page, for me as a CRO, the outcome I should be optimizing for on that should not be sales. If it's an informational page, we should perhaps be looking for different metrics. I think a lot of the time we don't see those two things align as well as they could. And it's a nice position to be in, where I can, as Judith explained on that project, I can be in a place where I've got an SEO I trust, and I can say, look, we've got to what we call the local maxima. We've got this page, this structure, this UX working as well as it can, but we're patently delivering the wrong type of people to these parts of the site. So we don't have enough of these parts of site, like the explain what we do part is where we're getting a lot of traffic, but we don't have many pages that actually explain what we do. And it's that pairing in between, getting it as good as we can, the local maximum for what we've got at the moment, and then going, well, the thing that's holding us back is we haven't got enough of the right audience, or we're dropping the audience too close to the purchase without qualifying them, or we've got too much informational stuff and highly qualified transactional visitors are landing on the same landing in page as everybody else and having to find the buy now part, which is actually what they care about on their particular visit. But it's not that common, because it takes kind of a more sophisticated understanding on the SEO side, and it takes a CRO who's looking outside of the tactical and the short term to get that kind of pairing working as well as it can. Quite often you just live with the audience you're given, get to a local maximum and go, that's as good as it can be. I think one of the things the CROs need to learn more is that we don't just exist in a vacuum. We need to work with all the marketing channels to make sure that we're directing the right people to what our data says is the right page.
Oh, the marketing channels. Go for it, Judith.
There's an interesting question that's come through in the chat for Tim, actually, around moving people around the sites and understanding user behavior from Simon Cox. And the question is, when Tim hasn't got an SEO to play with, how much does he rely on the UX team?
What happens if I don't have a UX team? That's No, I think this is one of those crossover points. So, not something which quite a lot of CROs won't look at is if you want the kind of the UX part of things, which is related to SEO. So I'd put that into kind of the information architecture. Is the site structured in a way that leads us to have that kind of natural funnel, all those separated sections? And if we don't have an SEO in place, then we'll be looking for what we call signposting. So I suppose in an SEO terms, you'd be thinking about how your breadcrumbs are, how your URL structure is set up in terms of kind of this is showing the development deeper into the site. That's what you have to work with. So if you haven't got somebody who's able to deliver traffic to the right section, what you have to do is find where they are landing and signpost where each of those various audiences could go. So that can mean a less than optimal page because you've split the focus. You've got a landing page that's trying to deal with both new and returning users who've got different requirements, different motivations. But there is something you can do to mitigate that not being the ideal setup when you don't have an information architect and SEO directing traffic to the right place, or indeed if you don't have a UX person to help you with how the site should flow as to the customer solution. And that's kind of what Alina's been alluding to, as being that ultimately we're trying to provide the user with what they need for that particular visit. And the signal I would say that Google gets is they don't go back and search again. But quite from a CRO perspective, don't care what Google thinks at this stage. If they haven't had to go back to the SERPs to search again, it means we answered that question, which means the page is doing what it's supposed to. Now, if that question's being answered is, yes, I would like to buy more, tell me more, go on deeper, great. If that question is answered, but they go, I know more for next time, but I'll bear you in mind, it narrows our odds on being a high intent brand search next time, which means we may not be fighting on the same brand term because the second search term will be an evolved search term. It'll be a longer tail, more deeper into the buying cycle. So it's a struggle when you don't have that marketing piece working as well as it could. There's only so much you can do with the audience that arrives, but there are tips and tricks to do in terms of understanding where you are with the audience, what you can change about that, and then making the most of what you do have. And that's what it's optimization, not perfectionization. We make the best of what we've got.
So in a few seconds, I'd like to get Alina's perspective on crossover points. And Alina, perhaps you could think of what you think is the key crossover area between CRO and SEO. But first of all, I'd like to give a listener a shout out. And thanks to Katie Joy B, who left a nice review of Marketing Scoop on Apple Podcasts saying, Marketing Magic, David, Judith, and their talented guests talk all things marketing, giving you the tools you need to get hands-on with your business. The best part is these tools come from truly engaging individuals that have been where you are and want to see you succeed. So thank you so much for putting out such a spectacular show, guys. Keep up the good work. And thank you, Katie Joy, for the lovely review. Much appreciated. But let's get back to Alina. Alina, what would you say is the key crossover area between SEO and CRO?
So if you're in SEO, you know that your job is often cross-reference with other teams. So from copy to web development, for example, UX, and then CRO is no different. So when you're saying about that cross-reference, I think it's really important to understand that you need to keep up that communication. The ideas need to come from both teams. You both need to be working on what is important to get from that outcome and from that testing. So when Tim was talking about what we're trying to achieve and like what Google is looking at, it's things like bounce rate, it's time spent on the page, it's engagement using that, it's the conversion. So the final outcome, did they buy? Did they press that button? Did they actually give up their email address? Or Google is so clever that they can actually see how many people have searched for a particular brand as well. So yes, going back to everybody needs to come up with the ideas and need to ensure that they're working together in order to get that final outcome.
So Alina, it sounds like you were talking a lot about user signals there. Have you seen user signals have a measurable impact on search results?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it's always hard to say what works for one company would work for a different company. But even working with a lot of bloggers, so personally, because I have my own personal interiors blog, I have a lot of friends who always ask for help. So in terms of actually helping them even improve the amount of people that go through and look at different blog posts, just by a simple edit of adding 2 or 3 suggestions at the bottom, meant that they were doing so much better with their ranking. So it's something that's simple and easy, but obviously something you should test for yourself.
There's a really interesting question as well that's come up for you in the chat.
Great.
That someone has. It's sort of a mirror to the one that we asked Tim earlier, which was, what do you do? And you've sort of alluded to things. What do you do when you bring in traffic, but there's no CRO to work with? What do you do? Do you make changes on page to buttons, colors? Do you experiment, or do you say, listen, we need to get Tim?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Once again, it depends on what kind of company you are, if you can get an agency or if you can get a person actually working on it. But essentially, it is a matter of coming up with the ideas and even coming up with research. It's going back to that ROI. Can you show that anybody else has done one particular task and seen any uplift from it? That means that you can actually do a similar sort of thing, but essentially it's a matter of testing. So without web development, unfortunately, nothing would go ahead. But if you've got an idea for a test, maybe it's something that you can do using a particular tool, and then that goes live. And essentially it's you having that control over what you want to see and test. Hopefully that answered the question a little bit.
Well, a follow up to that, Alina, is what do you do if you don't have a CRO at hand? So, for instance, if you're driving traffic to a web page and you're pretty sure that you can increase conversion rates, what first step would you tend to take?
Well, I think it's in a similar sort of way when you're testing actually like click-through rates using changes in your metadata, for example. It's what is in your control now. So have a look. Is it content? Is it imagery? Is it anything on there? Can you even change the button yourself? Then why not go ahead and test it for yourself? Look at Google Analytics. See how many people have actually looked at different pages after that, how many people have bought. It's easy to set up in the sense that, yes, it is like a reporting side of things and analytics, but it's definitely worth taking it on hand because it's so important for SEO.
Very interesting. Yeah, it looks like there is a lot of overlap between SEO and CRO, but not directly, only in we can bring the horse to water, but a CRO makes it drink. So what do, for both of you, what do you see as the future of CROs and SEOs working together? I know a lot of SEOs that dabble in CRO, and I know a couple of CROs that like to stay informed about SEO in order to ensure that they understand when those are the things that need improving. But I'll ask Tim first, as we've been hogging your time, Alina. Tim, what do you see as the future for SEO and CRO working together?
Obviously the future from the SEO side of things kind of depends on what Google's going to let you guys get away with. Frankly, it's their game. You've got to play what they decide the rules are. If there is any organic space left on the first page, then we'll see. But I think we're seeing a general convergence anyway. I think we talked about crossover, CRO, SEO. They both have an O there. And what we're trying to do is trying to optimize for the business. And I think if you're in the CRO space, what you've seen over the last few years is we're looking for a new name for it, really, because we're not obsessed with conversion rates. Conversion rate is a bit of a silly metric in terms of how easy it is to manipulate. But what we're trying to get is better outcomes for the business. And if you're in SEO, what you've seen as a general trend is what Alina kind of alluded to earlier on is accountability. Is the effort we're making here having the desired impact on the business? Are we seeing ROI is probably the wrong term, but are we seeing the returns that we need over a longer period that justify further investment? Can we see how well we're doing in terms of efficiencies in doing that? And conversion optimization or outcome optimization is all about that efficiency. It's about how well can we get the outcomes we want for the least effort. So I see that convergence coming together a bit more, because as there's less and less organic real estate to play with, as more and more sites get better at optimizing, the bar gets higher, Google makes the game harder, you're having to work harder for smaller returns. And at that point, your ROI is not going to stack unless you can find some way to skew that in your favor. So delivering to the right page, kind of where we are now, and we kind of got a handover. I think past that point, we're going to have to start going kind of the conversion optimizers going, well, here's what the data is saying. And bounce rate just means I came, what's Avanash's quote? I came, I puked. I came, I saw, I puked, I left. That's what bounce rate. Bounce rate is a rubbish metric. It's like, well, what did the people who did do something do? And can we increase that signal? And what signs do we have as to why the people who didn't do anything? And give that data to the SEOs and get them to not just optimize for Google, but say, look, we're trying to answer this question, people who react well to when this question is answered. And regardless of what our SERP ranking or tracking needs to say, this page is designed to do this job for these users. And when we do that better, it improves. So try and find me traffic to direct people to do so. And I think kind of using the intelligence we've got, and to a degree, it's survivor bias. We can only get data from the people who make it through. But if we have got some data, I think the CROs need to provide that data in sufficient detail to the SEOs to say, bounce rate's one thing, but the outcome they did, the click they took, rather than being clicked footer to complain, bounce rate just says any click is good. We want to say these were intended to go to this part of the site, and 70% of the people who clicked anything went to the part of the site they were intended. You sent us good enough traffic, and we've signposted it well enough to be doing that. The other stuff is either wastage or maybe should be pointed to a different page. How do we acquire those? What keywords they match to? I think on the SEO side of things, to tell the CROs, is we need to be conscious. I think that these silos need to come down, because we can work in glorious isolation. We can have a test running. We can be optimizing for the audience we've got. But if either the SEOs are getting beaten by somebody who's doing a better job for that keyword, or they're changing their content strategy, they're aiming for different people than we're expecting, we can set ourselves a baseline with how well it performs now, how well we've optimized that page for the audience at that part of their buying cycle, and then the macro factor, the thing outside the site that we can't control as CROs, changes, and can change so drastically that the page we optimize for is now optimized for wholly the wrong audience, because it's no longer who we're getting. So kind of the future needs to be continuing what we've seen, which is talking to people. And so that's kind of the key thing we have to kind of make sure we are always doing. But it's actually rarer than you'd think, and I think we need to do it more.
So in a minute, we'll ask both guests for an actionable takeaway for our listeners. But Alina, following on from what Tim was saying there, Tim mentioned that the word optimization, you both share a common O in your job titles. Does that mean that the future means a common optimization team? Are you going to be working more closely together moving forward?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I've heard a lot of people speak about this. So, for example, like Kevin Gibbons even suggested at one point that we might not even have websites. But at the end of the day, the point is that we will be optimizing. And what we are optimizing for, it doesn't matter, because it's a matter of where are our customers at. So, for example, is it a website? Is it an app? Is it voice search using their particular device? And that's how you optimize in order to get that traffic, no matter where they are, location-wise, or who they are, in order to get them to your company, your brand, to read your content, to buy products at the end of the day. So in my opinion, the future is the fact that a lot of people, or rather jobs, will be merging, and I guess they are a little bit already, in the sense that we are doing, as an SEO, doing more UX stuff, CRO, copy, etc.
And in relation to that, Alina, there's another comment in the chat saying silos don't work. Any ideas to bring them down? Have you encountered any situations where you've had split departments, where you've had a challenge getting people to work together, and have you actually managed to positively influence that?
Yeah, so obviously, especially when you're in a big brand like Debenhams and Tesco, sometimes it's just a matter of you trying to find the right person who is responsible for a particular thing. And that means that a lot of the time you don't even know who's responsible for, let's say, CRO and UX. And eventually, when you do, it's just a matter of keeping up that communication. I think it's a matter of growing that trust, keeping regular meetings, ensuring that you explain the reasons why you do it. So a lot of it is upskilling, educating them why you do it, because at the end of the day, you want to ensure that the goal is met of the business. So if that goal is the same as theirs, so is their target similar to yours? Is there anything that you can help them with in order to get their targets as well as your own? Then that always helps that conversation.
Wonderful stuff. Time now for an
I
actionable tip from each of our guests. Judith, carry on.
I was going to point out, so one of the things that I found very interesting from Tim was he talked about handing off. So we're handing off a customer from SEO to CRO. And I think, like Alina's hinted at over the whole podcast around testing and around understanding user intent, and Tim's also touched on understanding user intent. And as you've said, the silos don't work. SEOs and CROs are essential for the whole website working. So not only do silos have to come down, but CROs and SEOs absolutely must work together much more.
Absolutely. Well, time now for an actionable tip from each of our guests related to, or not necessarily related to, what we've been discussing so far. So let's go with Tim first. Tim, what is your actionable tip?
For CRO or just generally? In terms of what people can do, I think it's kind of conscious it's kind of more an SEO focused podcast. So I think one of the questions came up, and kind of Alina was to say, look, what to do when you don't have a CRO to work with. You can be a CRO, because effectively what we're talking about is trying to tune the way that people land on that landing pages. And there are plenty of simple tools which will help you do at least a basic version of a landing page, or a way to style it or direct or use the signposts that we talked about to get people to go further into the site. So I would say this actionable tip is stop listening to bounce rate, stop looking at bounce rate, start looking at going forward rate, and use tools like Unbounce or VWO or whatever within the budget. Google Optimize if you've got a free setup, and just change the page. If you can't change the traffic, or if the traffic you've got you need to get more value from, be a CRO yourself. The ultimate goal for CROs is to make ourselves completely redundant. We want everybody to be optimizing across the business. And so if anybody, is going to sit across multiple silos. And I think if you can start by trying your own tests, then we've got something we can come and help you with. Whereas if you're at the moment handing over and going, we've got your traffic, do your best, there's going to be a limit to how far you can go with that. So rather than struggling going, well, we don't have a CRO, therefore we're stuck, take that work on yourself. There are simple tests you can do. There's plenty of places you can read up on that. And I wouldn't say do the advanced stuff or work with your hardcore statistics, but is this page at least not as bad as the last one? Have we got enough data to work with? You can get started with that fairly simply yourself. So get started if you're an SEO by looking at the landing pages and working with CROs if you've got them, or if not, becoming somebody who at least looks optimizing the landing page, not just the search query.
Great thoughts. Well, you can find Tim over at trsdigital.com, and you can also, of course, see him speak at digitaleliteday.co.uk.
Next up, it's Alina. So Alina, what is your actionable tip?
Perfect. No, I totally agree with Tim. I think just keep your ideas flowing. If you are not changing, then you are not moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, it means you're not actually growing that traffic, don't get the conversion that you're looking for. So if you've got those ideas, like I've mentioned it about 1,000 times on the podcast, keep testing. I think that's really important, because without that, you just don't know what might work. What you think might work might not be correct.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And you can find Alina over at aghost.co.uk. I had to say that in a spooky voice because it's aghost.co.uk.
Don't blame you. Thank you.
And I've been Judith Lewis. your not-so-spooky co-host. And you can find me over at decapit.com.
A cool personal brand. Love it. I've been David Payne, your other co-host. You can also find me over at digitalmarketingradio.com. On next week's show, we are going to be looking at how to build a content hub.
Joining us for that episode will be the web and SEO lead for Uber in Latin America, Luis Rodriguez. Plus, the senior marketing consultant and founder at 6 Stories, Kelsey Jones. Make sure that you sign up to receive that audio episode as soon as it's released by going over to semrush.com/podcast. That's semrush.com/podcast.
Say it both ways, just in case they don't understand. Absolutely, yes. Thanks for joining us for this one, dear listener. Until next time, be fantabulous and do one thing that scares you. Adios.